Oi, como vai? Tudo bem? Welcome back to Portuguese Lessons with Professor Jason. This is going to be part 3 in the series of lessons that I'm uploading for the students in my Learning Portuguese for Fun class here at Missouri State University. Hopefully many more people will benefit from these lessons as well. In today's lesson, what I want to look at are the personal or the subject pronouns in Portuguese and some very common verbs that I'm going to call key verbs or go-to verbs. And we're going to look at the forms of those verbs that correspond to the subject pronouns, and I'm also going to give some examples so that you can see how they're used. So let's take a look at the subject pronouns. Okay, so what I have on this first slide are the personal subject pronouns in Brazilian Portuguese. First person singular, equivalent of I in English, is eu, eu. First person plural, we, is nós, nós. In the second person, right, for you can say tu, but the one beneath it, você, is more familiar. Você, você. Third person, there used to be a form, there still is a form, vós, for the plural, you guys, you all. But in Brazil, you're only going to hear vocês. Vocês. So singular you, você. Plural you all, you guys, vocês, vocês. In the third person, for he, it's ele, ele. She is ela, ela. Listen to the difference in how the first vowel of those is pronounced. Ele, ela. They're different. The formal, they, if it's a group of guys or a mixture of men and women, boys and girls, eles, eles, and if it's an all-female group, they is elas, elas. And you can see some examples of how these, at the bottom of the slide, how these personal subject pronouns equate, right? English compared to Portuguese. I'm going to go over these examples on the next slide where I talk about the verb ser. Okay, so let's talk about some key verbs, or verbos-chave. Okay, the first one we're going to look at is ser, ser, to be. Now, by key verbs, I mean verbs that are extremely common, get used a lot, and verbs that sort of the must-know, go-to verbs. And I'm going to have just 4 or 5 of them in this presentation. Let's look at ser, to be. You can see what I've done with the table here. I've taken those subject pronouns we saw in the previous slide, and those are going to equate to just 4 forms of any verb in Brazilian Portuguese. Okay, so the eu form, I, is eu sou, eu sou. Você, you, is você é, você é. Also for he and she, same form. Ele é, ela é. We are, nós somos, nós somos. You guys are, you plural, vocês são, são. That's that nasal A. São. Or they are, eles são. So examples, I am tall, eu sou alto. If I'm a woman, eu sou alta. We are students, nós somos alunos. Nós somos alunos. You are my friend, você. Você é meu amigo. Você é meu amigo. You guys or you all are my friends. Vocês são meus amigos. Vocês são meus amigos. She is my sister. Ela é minha irmã. Ela é minha irmã. They are professor. Those guys are professors. Eles são professores. Eles são professores. Okay, moving on. Let's take a look at our second key verb, ir. Ir, to go. Very common verb, used very frequently. Lots of idiomatic expressions. Okay, so first person form, I go, eu vou. You go, você vai. He or she goes, ele vai, ela vai. We go, nós vamos. You all, you guys go. Vocês vão, they go. Eles vão, elas vão. Okay, examples. I'm going to the market. Eu vou ao mercado. Eu vou ao mercado. Are we going to the movies? Nós vamos ao cinema. Nós vamos ao cinema. You're going to. Você vai também. Também is also. You guys go every day. Vocês vão todo dia. Vocês vão todo dia. He's going to have dinner. These last two examples, I show how you can use the verb ir to go with another verb to say that somebody is going to do something, much as we do in English. He's going to have dinner. Ele vai jantar. Ele vai jantar. So the verb ir is conjugated, but what the person's going to do, the second verb, is left in the unconjugated form, the infinitive. Ele vai jantar. They are going to call me, the women, the girls. Elas vão me ligar. Vão me ligar. The me means to me in this case. All right, moving on to our third key verb, the verb ter, to have. I have, eu tenho. You have, você tem. Nasal diphthong there at the end. Você tem. He or she has, ele tem, ela tem. Nós temos, we have. You all have, vocês têm, they have, eles têm, elas têm. You can see the circumflex accent written just to differentiate it from the third person singular form, I guess. Examples. I have two kids. Eu tenho duas crianças. Eu tenho duas crianças. We don't have a car. Nós não temos carro. Não temos carro. One thing I should have pointed out earlier with these pronouns, subject pronouns, is that in Brazilian Portuguese, you can pretty much drop the personal subject pronoun eu e nós in many cases when it's clear from the verb form, right? Because tenho or vou can only be the eu form, right? Vou ao mercado, tenho duas crianças. I'm talking about I. Same with nós. Não temos carro. You don't necessarily need the nós. You can add it for emphasis or include it for emphasis. With the third person forms, sometimes it's a little more important because they could in theory refer to just about anything. So sometimes it's especially helpful to include unless it's obvious from the conversation, the context. You have my book. Você tem meu livro. Você tem meu livro. Do you guys have a dog? Vocês têm cachorro? Vocês têm cachorro? We can also use the verb ter to describe somebody's age, right? So use ter and then the number of years. She is 25 years old. Ela tem 25 anos. Ela tem 25 anos. Also, the verb ter is used to say what somebody has to do. Just like in English, I might say, they have to study, right? Using the conjugated have as an auxiliary verb with another verb. Eles têm que estudar. Eles têm que estudar. Okay? So another really useful common verb is querer. Querer, to want to. I want, eu quero. You want, você quer. He wants, ele quer. She wants, ela quer. We want, nós queremos. You guys, you all want, vocês querem. They want, eles querem, ou elas querem. So, for example, I want a beer, very useful phrase. Eu quero uma cerveja. Eu quero uma cerveja. Quero uma cerveja. We want a new house. Nós queremos uma casa nova. Uma casa nova. Queremos uma casa nova. What do you want? O que você quer? O que você quer? You guys want some veggies? Vocês querem vegetais? Querem vegetais? He wants to eat. So like we saw with the verb ter and the verb ir, we can combine these much as we do in English with second verbs, right? To want to do something. In this case, he wants to eat. Conjugate the first form. Ele quer, then leave the second verb in the infinitive. Ele quer comer. Ele quer comer. They want to dance. Elas querem dançar. Elas querem dançar. Okay, the final key verb or common go-to verb that I want to look at in this lesson is gostar. And I have the preposition de in parentheses because the verb's almost always used in conjunction with that preposition de. Okay? I want, I like, eu gosto. Notice the open O, gosto. Eu gosto. You want, você gosta. He wants, ele gosta. She wants, ela gosta. We want, nós gostamos. Notice here in the nós form, we don't have that open O. It's gostamos. So you can hear the difference. Eu gosto, nós gostamos. You all want, back to the open O. Vocês gostam. They want, eles gostam. They want, women, elas gostam. Gostam. Okay? It's tricky to get that difference between the open O, eu gosto, and the other regular close O. Nós gostamos. I struggle a lot with it. Okay? But just be aware. And also another thing to point out with this particular slide is that of all the verbs we've seen so far, right? Ir, what else did we see? We saw ser, we saw ter, we saw querer. This is the first one that's really a regular verb. By that I mean you conjugate it by adding the regular stems, in this case for an AR verb, the regular endings to a stem. All the four previous verbs we saw were all irregular verbs. You just simply have to memorize the four forms. This one follows the pattern of regular verbs, regular AR verbs. Gosto, gosta, gostamos, gostam. Okay, examples. Eu gosto de café. Notice the de. Gosto de café. Nós gostamos de esportes. Nós gostamos de esportes. Nós gostamos de esportes. We like sports. Do you like flowers? Should have a question mark. Do you like flowers? Você gosta de flores? Você gosta de flores? Again, the way to answer a question is just with the verb form. So if somebody asks me, você gosta de flores? I could say, gosto sim. Gosto muito. You guys like to sleep. Vocês gostam de dormir. She doesn't like to study. Ela não gosta de estudar. Ela não gosta de estudar. They like to sing. Eles gostam de cantar. Gostam de cantar. Those verb forms that end in M, like we have here, gostam. You don't pronounce the M. What that does is it nasalizes the preceding vowel. So you don't say eles gostam. You say eles gostam. Eles gostam de cantar. More or less, right? Mais ou menos assim. Alright, that concludes my presentation on the subject pronouns and a few key verbs in Portuguese. I hope it's been informative and useful. If you have any questions or would like to leave a comment or suggestion, please let me know what you're thinking and I'll try to get back to you. If you like this video, I hope you'll check out my other lessons on various topics in Portuguese and Spanish. You can also find more content on my website at professorjason.com and receive even more frequent Professor Jason updates by liking my Facebook page or following me on Twitter. Thanks again for watching. This has been Professor Jason, your guide to Portuguese and Spanish, and I'll see you at the next lesson. Até logo. Ciao.